Good morning, garden people. It's a windy, very windy, chilly October day, and I'm here in the vegetable garden. I have a couple of things I need to do today, but I thought I would take you through the garden and give you an update on where we are. We're about to get a frost, our first really hard frost of the season. And so before I take you through this garden, I have one big task I need to do. This row behind me is the group sweet potato row that a bunch of my friends and I chipped in on and planted, and now we need to harvest. With the frost coming, we're going to be harvesting a little bit earlier to get them out of the ground. And so today my task is to take all these vines, cut them at ground level, and get them out of the garden so that tomorrow my friends can come in and start digging. And then we'll put the tubers in the greenhouse to cure for a couple of weeks before we divvy them up and put them in our own storage situations in our home. So I'm gonna get cracking on this first, and then I'll take you through the garden. Whew, that was a job. My next step was going to be removing this row cover, this woven row cloth, to make it easier for my friends in the morning to be able to just get in and get to work. But because there's going to be a frost tonight probably, and because of what I saw in this row, I think I'm going to leave it. Let me show you why. As I was cutting back the vines, I noticed that right at the surface here, you can see as I pull this up, there's some sweet potato tubers right here close to the surface. And I'm kind of concerned. I'll go to the next couple of rows here. I'm kind of concerned that if I pull this black plastic off, these beautiful tubers will be exposed to the frost tonight. So, and you can see there's a bunch of them that are sort of humped up underneath the plastic. And so what I'm going to do is leave this black plastic on tonight, and I'm actually going to pull another tarp on top to cover it, just to make sure that whatever frost we get tonight doesn't harm these tubers and, you know, make the sweet potatoes rot quicker than they normally would. All right, that task done. There's a couple more things I need to do in here today, but let me take you around to some of the rows and show you what's been happening in the vegetable garden. Right behind me, you can see the sunflower and Mexican sunflower or wildflower row. It's been a huge, huge hit with the birds this year. So despite my lack of attention to these rows, the Mexican sunflowers and the regular sunflowers behind have been hugely successful this year. Every time I came into the garden, they were loaded with bumblebees, and now the birds have come in. I haven't been very good about deadheading these Mexican sunflowers, but now the seed heads are ripening, and you can see like these two are picked clean. So the birds will come in and clean them up before winter. And then these large sunflower heads, you can see they've been pretty well picked clean. But every time I come into this garden, It's just a flock, a huge flock of goldfinches, regular finches, chickadees. I've seen a lot of chickadees in here. And then what I affectionately call brown birdies. Actually, there's some right there. I don't know if I can focus in. There's some chickadees and a titmouse, actually. I don't know that you could see that, but there they go. So they've just been in here every day, ripping apart these heads, and I'm thrilled. This is exactly what I wanted to happen. Oh, there's a finch right there, goldfinch. I won't walk any further down because I don't want them to fly off and be scared. And then down here, my zinnias. These were just leftover zinnia plants that I didn't have a home for, so I threw them in here. Deadheaded them once during the summer, and they're still blooming. I don't get it, but it's wonderful. So next year, I definitely have plans to do a big row of sunflowers and these Mexican sunflowers and zinnias, plus maybe some cosmos to try to get the same effect next year and bring all these species into the garden. So I'm back at the head of the garden, and here are the rows, the 3 rows that my friends Mel and Lydia and Carrie and Julie all had this year. And as you can see, they're pretty much empty. Julie came in and harvested a big second crop, maybe even a third crop of her paste tomatoes, and then came in and ripped out all the vines, so they're done. And then my other friends came in and pulled down their tomatoes and much of the leftover watermelon vines and a few other things. And there's some peppers left and some marigolds, but they'll come back in and clean those rows up when they get a chance. Here we have the sweet potato row that I just cleaned up, and next to it is the potato row, my potato row, regular storage potatoes that I grew, and we've been eating them regularly lately, and they've been wonderful. And the next couple of rows, this row actually was the onion row. I pulled the onions and I planted a second crop. This is just head lettuce, regular heads of lettuce, some summer crisp varieties that do a little better in the later season, and a green leaf variety here. And they're actually really gorgeous right now. I'm gonna harvest some for dinner. So I'm gonna cover these tonight just to make sure that they don't get singed by the frost. Although lettuce does pretty well in a light frost. The next couple of rows were my Salanova rows. And you can see in this row here, I've got some baby Salanovas. These were my last plantings. The row cover got blown up a little bit above the leaves. I'll have to tuck that back down. This year, the Salanova has been a bit of a disappointment, and I'm not sure why. It might be my watering. I know the heat took out, the heat wave we had in late July took out most of this, most of the previous planting, so I had to start over. But the plantings I did in August just really suffered, and I'm not sure why. This was one, and I need to get this out of the garden soon. This one just succumbed to powdery mildew, and it was like overnight. One day it was fine. I'm gonna focus in here, and I don't know if you can see the white blotches on the leaves. So one day it was fine. I waited to harvest, and the next day it was, or next week, 1 week later, it was covered in powdery mildew. So that's got to come out. The next crop here, so far it looks okay. There's a little powdery mildew on this red variety, so I'm not sure if it's going to be salvageable, which is a real disappointment. I was hoping to be able to sell this to the store. This part looks okay, so we'll see. I'll give it another week. It should do fine through the frost, and then we'll kind of make a judgment call about whether we continue with this or not. I'm standing now in front of the chard row, which also has bell peppers, beans, and some Carmen peppers at the end of it, and realizing that, ooh, I need to harvest some today too. because we're gonna have a frost tonight, and peppers especially don't like frost. So I'm gonna go grab some peppers, and I think I'll save the chard for later, but give me a sec to grab some peppers. So, not a spectacular harvest, but I've been picking these all along as soon as they ripened, and I've had quite a few, so I'm pretty satisfied with what's left. I will try to figure out how to use these before they go bad. The one thing I will definitely do different next year as I swing around is I will top these pepper plants off probably sometime mid-September or so. You can see here there's a lot of new peppers, buds, flowers. These plants, all of them, are really trying to put on as much growth and fruit as they can in the last bits of the summer, and they're never going to get big enough to be usable or to ripen. So that's just wasted energy. So what I'll do is next year I will top these plants off up here and allow the fruit that's hanging down below to use all the energy to ripen and get bigger. The green beans this year have been sort of a disappointment, mainly because I haven't been able to get in here and keep up on the picking. And that is the trick with green beans, is the more you pick, the more they produce. And as you can see, if we get in here, there are lots of large beans in there that just are not good eating quality. So unfortunately the frost is going to take these all out tomorrow, but try better next year. There's some more beans here. And then down here we have the Carmen peppers. These were just leftover plants that I threw in, and sadly these green ones just aren't going to ripen in time. I may pick a few and see if I can get them to ripen indoors. This one actually I'll pick this one. But again, maybe start them earlier next year and top them off, because as you can see, there's a lot of new growth up here that just is a waste of energy at this time of year. But maybe top them, prune them back, and allow all these lower ones to ripen in time. Okay, so peppers sorted. I actually went through and just harvested all the green ones. I figure somebody I know will be able to do something with them, so don't want to waste them. I'm back up here at the head of the garden, and yeah, this section has been kind of a disappointment this year, but that's okay. That's the beauty of gardening, is that there's always next year to try something different and do better. So as you can see, my peas are still up on the fence. Yep, haven't pulled those yet. Oh well. And then, nope, still haven't harvested my carrots. These are early season carrots, and they're still in the ground. Got to do that today because the frost will damage them. Or maybe I'll hill them up and that'll be fine. Behind them, the kale and the cabbage that just got decimated by the cabbage worms. And underneath these two little sections of row cover, I attempted to start a second planting of kale, which normally would have been fine. Start them in August and you'd have a nice fall crop. Except we had a warm spell, not a heat wave, but just a warm spell, and we didn't have a whole lot of rain early this fall. It's very, very dry, and I forgot to water them for about 48 hours. And normally for full-size plants that's not a big deal, but these were, little 4-inch seedlings, and it killed most of them. So that's embarrassing for a gardener. you know, a supposed market gardener that knows better. I should have known better, and I forgot and just screwed up. So yeah, so we'll move on and do better next year. So here are the rows that were the mixed greens and arugula that I covered a few months ago. Underneath them should be lovely and clean of weeds. And if you remember in my shade garden update, I told you that I was now moving perennials into the vegetable garden. And it's this row. I just peeled back the tarp, folded it back, and it's a nice, clean, weed-free row. And in here are a whole pile of perennials. Even though I don't have a place for them, I couldn't resist a sale on perennials with a local catalog, and ordered a whole pile of sun-loving, pollinator-friendly perennials, and then stuck them in here. And then the rest of these are all things that I either grew from seed and just never got into the garden this year, like this big patch of lavender, and these cone flowers called Paradiso Tall Mix, and a bunch of other stuff. And then in the back there are all the perennials that I dug out of the shade garden and put here to hold until I decide where they're going to go. A lot of these are going to go back into the pollinator paradise garden. There are some peonies way in the back that will go in the new garden by the barn. And some of these may make it back into the kitchen view garden, but I need to do that pretty quick because time is running short. As you can see back there, let me walk back here, the comfrey is just ridiculous. I'm definitely going to be giving away a bunch of this to other people because if I just let this go, it's going to be insane. But look at how lush those leaves are. Aren't they amazing? And I'm going to swing the camera back here. This is my patch of lavage. I've never grown this before. These were leftover seedlings from ones I started from seed that I stuck in here. I have a couple up in the herb garden, but not being one to, you know, want to throw plants away, I stuck them in here, and they're already pretty big. They supposedly get up to like 6 to 8 feet tall if you let them. So we'll see. We'll see what happens next year. And then my rhubarb, up until like a couple weeks ago, was still going strong. It's finally dying back, which is normal for this plant this time of year. So pretty soon, all these leaves will just be in the compost pile. And next year, we'll have a ton of rhubarb. The final row, the asparagus, I was really worried about this asparagus earlier on because it got hit by the asparagus beetle pretty hard. I mean, completely defoliated almost. And I was worried that it was going to damage the crowns. But it looks like it's rebounded beautifully with some nice foliage, which I will leave up and allow, to continue to strengthen the root system and cut it down once it dies back. And hopefully next year I can stay on top of the asparagus beetle and we can have some nice asparagus for dinner. Well, that's the update from the vegetable garden. Lots happened this year, some successful, some not so much. I'm very happy with most of my greens, and the onions were spectacular, and the pollinator rows, especially the sunflowers and zinnias, that was amazing with all of the bees and the birds, and it was full of life all summer long, and I definitely want to do that again. The brassicas, not so much. But that's the beauty of gardening. I think the eternal hope of next year. So I will regroup. I will come up with a better plan for next year and try it all over again and hopefully have better success like I know I've had in the past. So for now, I'm going to tackle this chard row. I'm going to pull up some leaves for the freezer. I put a lot away for the freezer, and then some for fresh eating. One thing, when I look back at the year and, sitting here in the garden, kind of looking at the the brown shriveled foliage and cleaning stuff up, I realize I'm pretty darn lucky. I mean, can you ask for anything better to be harvesting and playing in the garden with this view? It's amazing. And I'm very lucky to be able to do this on a daily basis. So when my brassicas look like crap, I just remember that I'm very lucky to be able to grow vegetables in a beautiful part of the country on a beautiful piece of land, and that keeps me going for sure. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate that you're here, and I hope you'll come back and see my other videos coming soon. Take care. Bye.